Welcome to Fleet News Group podcast, where we like to talk about all things to do with fleet and particularly sustainable transport. I'm your host, Caroline Falls, and today I'm in Milan, Italy, and I'm very excited to have as my guest Davide Gibellini, Managing Partner with Europe-based fleet management group, Fleetcompetence. Welcome, David.
Thank you. It's my pleasure being here.
One of my first podcast guests was actually Boltz Eggenberger from your company, Fleetcompetence.
Right.
It was in the early days of COVID, actually, and we had a great chat. But for our listeners in the Southern Hemisphere, can you tell us a bit about Fleetcompetence, what it does and where it operates?
Sure. Fleetcompetence is the largest international consulting firm in the fleet and mobility industry. We operate in these two domains, so being really fleets of cars and vans, and also what we may easily call the new word of mobility management, which is a little bit vague, but we can deep dive if we want to. And we currently operate in several countries. We cover 40 geographies so far. And basically, we help companies to do three main things. One would be around compliance and policy. The second one is about optimization and saving. And then we have all the sustainability word. And particularly, we help companies to take proper decisions. So often they don't have the time, the possibilities, or the tools to know the data and to get accurate decisions. So we help them to capture those pieces of data, to analyze the data, to also design scenarios to improve their efficiency or their sustainability, depending on what's in the top of the agenda. And then we can also assist companies in implementing and getting the actual results.
So you mentioned 40 countries. They're all in the Northern Hemisphere, I think.
Yeah. It would be all the European countries. Then we have the USA, Canada, Latin America, and Turkey, and that's it.
Oh, I wonder if you'll ever come down to the Southern Hemisphere.
We actually are covering the southern part of the Americas, so it would be Mexico, Brazil, and those countries. We would love also to come to your region, so maybe who knows, that's in our plan. It would be lovely. I mean, we still think we can learn so much. I mean, we make diversity. In the sense of really a diverse approach and diverse habit to manage fleet, we think is a richness for the group. So really we can learn from one country to each other, and we can adopt some best practices that were born in one country and just to export to another one. So we'd love to.
Well, that's why it's so exciting to have you here, actually, because we love to learn as well from other jurisdictions. So your Fleetcompetence group is about to sort of meet for annual talks in this city, Milan, in late October. So I was just wondering sort of what some of the key things are on the agenda.
Right.
And I also wonder if you could sort of like tell me what some of the big problems are that you're trying to sort of think about and address.
Right. In the last week of October, we will have two events. One is a public one. It's probably the most relevant fleet event in Europe. It's called Fleet Europe Days. That would be the 23 and 24 of October. And before that, the 2 days before that event, we are having our own event, the Fleetcompetence International Partner Meeting. So where all the partners, we actually meet face to face twice a year. Well, for the most of the European countries, and the others we meet virtually, but that would be, a global event for all the partners of the group. And basically, I will start from the public event because a couple of things that I think could be relevant also for Australia. So, in the agenda, we have the cost of sustainability. This is really a hot topic today because, as we all know, sustainability has a cost. And in order to be sustainable from a holistic perspective, it also needs to be financially sustainable, and also you also need people acceptance. I think we're all familiar with the famous 3 Ps approach, being planet, profit, and people. So once you can find the proper trade-off between these 3 Ps, then it's really fully sustainable. We also have how to put sustainability into the commercial vehicles. Of course, there's been a lot of talk about the EV, but normally we talk about passenger cars as opposed to the commercial vehicles and to the trucks. Well, trucks, I think it's something which needs to be addressed separately, but commercial vehicles, the light commercial vehicles, there are huge fleets of those vehicles, and the sustainability is a fully different concept because they run more kilometers. You probably have also to load something, and so the capacity of the battery is definitely is a challenge. And then the third thing is about remarketing. So the future of remarketing is also on the agenda because thanks to the latest AI, how you can, let's say, do damage recognition, a calculation in an automated way, which is definitely going to change all the process of the remarketing, and also how to engage people when they see a video, say on the web, and how to engage them into a conversation and bring them to the dealer. Once they see the car from a totally different perspective, they can really enter into the car. They can have, well, something that resembles, the famous look and feel experience, even though they're standing in front of their PC, of their mobile. So these would be some of the hottest topics for the general audience. As far as our group is concerned, we are particularly interested in helping those companies that want to improve their carbon footprint but don't have the possibility, to move to EV yet because, they have difficulties with the autonomy, the infrastructure, or simply the cost. But still, they want to do something in order to reduce their average emission. And so we've come up with a series of initiatives, and I want to mention one which I think is very, very relevant. If I ask all the people what's the most relevant element in order to reduce emission, then I see people that start, doubting and puzzling around. And I think the answer is very simple. It's the driving behavior. So, if you need to stick to a traditional ICE car, but still you want to do something, if you can work on the driving behavior of your drivers, you can save up to 15 or 20% in the cost and in the emission. You don't change the car, you don't need any capex. It's a plan that pays off within 9 months. And it's amazing. You can do some things also virtually. We have 9 eco-driving tips. We teach them to the people in one single session of 90 minutes. We teach the tips. We show them a few videos with the classical mistakes that we all make. And then we ask them to engage in a sort of, let me say, competition. So we play around the gamification, and we say it's not a challenge between Caroline and Davide, it's a challenge to yourself. Do you want to have the possibility to do something for the world, for the climate? So we taught you the tips. We give you your initial rating. It would be 5 colors. So you know the starting point, the baseline, and we ask you to drive for the next 3 months and apply those eco-driving tips, and then we measure your performance at the end of the period, and you know what? You get let me say, you may also get a reward for the company, but the thing you get is a certification that really says in a scientific way how much kilograms you save of CO2, and it's a recognition. You can also celebrate it with your family, with yourself. You did something good for the planet, and then we measure overall for the company. So that certificate can also be used by the company into their sustainability report. So this is something that you can do very easily. It doesn't require investment. It doesn't require big things. A slow investment. It's also fun. You can apply it also in your personal life. You can talk with your husband, your wife.
Fantastic. You mentioned the 3 Ps, and I'm just wondering if there's another, there's a word starting with P, pushback. So there's a little bit of that, it feels like, going on. In Italy here today, like every day on the news, there's stuff about troubles with European car companies, namely Volkswagen, Stellantis. And, is it to do with some sort of overreach with sustainability, a bit of pushback going on there? And I also note, like in the US, there's some litigation going on with California over some very sort of optimistic regulations that they're trying to bring in around trucking. So a bit of pushback.
Yeah. If you read the newspapers, one of the most compelling question is the future of Europe's car industry one of collapse and decline? I think talking about fall of the European car industry is a little bit premature. Most, if not all, of the EU car makers are still selling a lot of cars and making money, so they are in a good area. But you're right, they're facing big issues, and to me, there is some conventional wisdom explanation and some real explanation. I will start from the first, and then I will deep dive a little bit on the second, also touch basing with the 2 names that you mentioned, being Stellantis and VW. The conventional wisdom is talking about a change in the paradigm. So the EU car makers are traditional car makers making traditional cars, so making things, as opposed to EV, and they are main digital era products. So the paradigm and also the business model is different. Basically, the margin of EV is coming from 2 things: batteries and software. And these 2 things are not into the DNA of traditional cars. This could be an explanation, but I think the real key issue is about sales. So Europe took very seriously the climate challenge, and it's probably the continent that first of all said we want to be carbon neutral by 2050. And so we want to implement hard and real measures in order to reduce emissions. To do this, there were forecasts to reach a certain level of EV sales that would offset the emissions of the traditional cars. Unfortunately, Europe is not hitting such a level. So, it's in a way, it's an ironic situation, because if you want to keep producing ICE cars, you need to lose money because you pay fines that are set by the European Commission. On the contrary, if you stop producing ICE car, you're losing money anyway, because your volume is lower and you have a high fixed cost base, and once your volume is lower, your revenue is lower, and then you're losing money. So either things, if you don't reach a certain level of EV sales that are compensating the fall in the ICE cars, then you're going to lose anyway. So it's a little bit tricky, and this is something that is common to all the European car makers. Recently, the financial head of Volkswagen said, we are lacking as many as 500,000 cars, and this is the equivalent of 2 factories. So when it comes to streamline the operation, which is a nice word, but at the end of the day it means reducing the plants and reducing the labor force. This is hard, socially very hard, and it affects people. And so you enter also into debates with trade union, of course. And we know that the car industry is super relevant for Europe. I think it's around 11% of the European GDP, or in that area. It's probably the first industry overall for Europe. I also want to mention a recent interview from the Renault CEO, which happens also to be the president of the European Association of Car Makers. And he said, we are lacking overall 2.5 million of EV cars in terms of sales. It's a lot. If we don't reach that level, we're going to face 15 billion fines. So as I said, either one or the other can allow themselves to lose money and keep producing traditional cars, or they stop producing traditional cars and they lose even more money. That's a little bit of the question.
Yeah, it's a huge conundrum, and certainly something that we'll watch with interest unfold in the next sort of decade, I guess. Because you've also got, as you say, it's like one of the biggest industries in Europe, so you're going to protect it against very sort of ambitious Asian brand new companies that only make EVs, like from China, which Australia, we don't have that problem. We don't have to protect we don't have a car industry, so to speak, to protect.
Yeah, you could say it's protection, but if I may, I think there's also another side of the coin. If you think of Toyota, they invested on hybrid cars as opposed to EV, and a few years ago they were predicted to have a bad future. But if you look at Toyota, they had the best year ever. And so I think the car industry is far more complicated than a simple discussion about the paradigm and the trend. And I think that overall the European car makers have some safety valves because they're also differentiating their risk. If you take like Mercedes, I think last year they sold as many as 1/3 of their cars in China, because there's a rising economical power for the middle class, and so they also want to get luxury brands, and that's one thing. The other thing is that in the last 5 years, European car makers have been heavily investing in such technologies, so both batteries and software. They haven't been successful yet, but they haven't started yesterday. They started back a few years ago, so they may get to results. And one final thing, which is not so often mentioned, is about the so-called e-fuel, which is very interesting. If you think just about an Italian Fortune 500, it's a big oil company called Eni. They just discovered a couple of years ago a new e-fuel diesel called HVO, which can reduce by 90% the CO2 emission. It's a fully vegetable e-diesel. I mean, that's amazing.
It's incredible.
And you can use in all the, starting from Euro 5 cars, any car, you don't need any device, you don't need any transformation, you don't need anything. We already have 1,000 stations, for instance, in Italy, that can provide such a e-diesel. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that's really a turnaround.
It's huge.
That's huge.
Are you able to tell us anything about heavy vehicle transition to electric trucks? But I guess we can also talk about them turning to this new e-diesel. Of course, Europe's very different to Australia. I think where distances travelled by trucks can be much longer than here, as you've got cities and modal interchanges much closer than we do. But do you know much about what's going on with the heavy vehicle transition?
Yeah, I think this is a very nice question. We now, EV are quite common. If you take 2022, 1 car out of 7 was an EV car, I mean globally. But if we look at the trucks, only 0.2% is running on electricity. Do we have a technological gap? I mean, technology is there, but if you think, I mean, there are 2 obstacles for the conversion, and one is around the prolonged journey time that is required, because when you travel with an e-truck, you need to stop more often compared to a diesel truck, and so this is affecting the revenue time of the fleet operator, and this is one obstacle. The other one is the high initial cost of the truck compared to a traditional truck. So this is one side. On the other side, we have a saving that could be above 40% in terms of the consumption, and also as a consequence of that in terms of the emission. So at the end of the day, to put it simple, if you look at the from a fleet perspective, each hour of revenue requires some 20 minutes of stop, just to give a simple number. So, there's a strong impact on the operation, and in terms of the capacity of the truck to produce a certain amount of revenue, also to respect if there are compliances in the delivery, and to respect some timelines. You may be forced to postpone some of your deadlines, and that's it. Will it change? Probably in the next 3 to 5 years there will not be big changes, but we also have an alternative, because one thing could be 2 things that we already mentioned for the cars are the e-diesel and the driving style. These are especially relevant for trucks. And the third thing is about the liquefied natural gas, which is a very nice option. I mean, we have several companies, especially in some industries, we see in Europe that are more sensitive to the ESG agenda, like utility and waste management. They are swapping the traditional diesel truck with the LNG truck. They are also making some experiments with the e-trucks, especially if the trucks, you know, they don't have high distance. Maybe they collect the waste into a city or in the suburban area, but they don't have to run.
And they can return to the depot.
They can return to the depot, exactly.
Yeah. Davide, I know you have to go to Rome this morning, and I'm pleased to know you're catching public transport. You're going on the fast train, I presume.
Yeah, that's it.
Talking about e-mobility and sustainable transport, are more companies in Europe using public transport options, requiring their staff to, catch public transport more so than they have in the past?
Yeah. Most countries are requiring companies to make a thing called mobility plan. It's now an obligation since a few years ago, and that is common for several European countries, and the ones that haven't adopted such a requirement yet are inclined to do so. So I want to start from the companies. Companies are asked to make a survey to understand what way of transportation their employees are actually taking, and the time they leave from their home, the time they go back. If they need to make, say, an intermediate stop, like, to drop your children or to go to, your parent or something, and in order to combine people and make carpool, so that would be an option. Say, we discover, because we may not necessarily know that we live close one to each other, and maybe your time and my time are similar in terms of the entry time and the leaving time from the office. And so there is an app that allows employees to make carpooling. They are incentivized to do so, so they really get a reward for giving such opportunity, to collect people. And if, on the contrary, people are taking the public transportation, the company can offer a rebate that could arrive up to 1/3 of the yearly fare. So 1/3 would be paid by the company and 2/3 by the employees. And these are two of the several examples that companies can utilize to incentivize their employees to, drop this equation, one car, one person, because that's the issue that we need to face, one car, one person, and to also experiment some differences in the public transportation. This plan is then submitted to the city area manager of that city, and it goes that since we're also making such a plan for our customer, for our companies that we follow, that then the area manager of that city calls the mobility manager of the company and say, we were told that, say, we have a group of people that would take the, let me say, standard subway, but they don't have a stop that is close. Well, for the subway it's a little bit difficult, but take a bus, which is much more easy. The stop is not close to the office. Can you do something for us?
Wow. Excuse me, thank you so much, David. It's been brilliant to talk to you. There's so many fresh and new ideas to think about.
Also, pleasure on my side. Thank you, Caroline. I hope there will be another occasion for us to meet up.
Maybe in Australia.
Maybe in Australia, why not?
You've been listening to Fleet Auto News podcast. It was edited and produced by Isabella Fiorentino. The original theme music for this podcast was created by Isabella Fiorentino. You can follow us on Spotify. Just search for Fleet Auto News. We're also on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. Our website is fleetautonews.com, where you can get all our stories, videos and podcasts. Until next time, drive safely and take care.